I was off yesterday. I watched a big chunk of the hearings. They are gaining steam. There are a surprising polling as to how many people have been watching the hearings. They've been getting ratings. Of course, the big ratings were on prime time, so the Democrats didn't want to get too carried away with this threat to democracy thing, so they decided to put it on during daytime. Nevertheless, 58% of voters heard about the hearings that were held on June 13th and 16th. 38% of voters said they watched or listened to at least some of them. Now, there was obviously a big substantial partisan divide. 56% of Democratic voters watched, 32% of independents, and 25% of Republicans. Just 38% said they heard a lot or some of retired Judge Michael Litig's statement to the Jan 6 committee that Trump and his allies instigated a war on democracy. 62% of voters said they heard not much or nothing at all. Meanwhile, 42% of voters heard a lot or some about Elon Musk's statements that he recently voted for a Republican for the first time in his life. Nevertheless, despite the fact that more people heard about Elon Musk, because of course they did, because he's a billionaire and he gets a lot of coverage.
He's a billionaire attention seeker.
Yes. But the idea that you have 25% of Republicans, 30 some odd percent, 8% of independents, I don't think it's going to make a difference in 2022 because of the, frankly, the strategy by the Democratic leadership to say that some good Republicans good, even though they're all on board with this stuff. Other Republicans bad. This never Trumper strategy is a huge mistake, in my opinion, by the Democrats. Nevertheless, the hearings, I think, are going to hurt Trump. And probably not so much within the Republican Party. He's still going to have the plurality of support within the Republican Party. But Raffensperger tested yesterday, this is the Secretary of State from Georgia, the reason why Donald Trump lost in 2020 was because there was 35,000 or so Republicans who voted down ticket and left the top of the ticket blank. And I think these hearings may end up increasing that number in certain areas, depending on who the Democratic nominee is. We shall see. But it is interesting. And certainly, the testimony was pretty moving. Here is testimony from Shay Moss. She was a Georgia elections worker, harassed by Rudy Giuliani, accused of rigging the election results in Georgia. She's just a woman whose mom had been an election worker. She was a poll worker, and it has shattered her life. I also happen to think, and there is a suit that's out there, there is a strong case for defamation here. She is not a public person, at least wasn't at the time that she was attacked by Giuliani and Trump. Here is parts of her testimony.
Those horrible things, did they include threats?
Yes, a lot of threats, wishing death upon me, telling me that, you know, I'll be in jail with my mother, and saying things like, be glad it's 2020 and not 1920. That's, yeah.
Were a lot of these threats and vile comments racist in nature?
A lot of them were racist. A lot of them were just hateful.
Is that all we have? Do we not have more? Okay. Nevertheless, she goes on to talk about how she has been unable to leave her house. She has unable to say her name publicly when she goes to a restaurant or uses her credit card. Her mother, same situation. She's gained 60 pounds since the election. because of the enormous stress that she has been under. And in a very dramatic moment, she says, imagine that the president of the United States singles you out and makes you a villain. I mean, it really is a stunning thing to contemplate. The most powerful position in the world, and the guy plucks her out of obscurity so that he can create this narrative that the election was stolen in Georgia.